not something we talk about very much. 1 in 3 men is sexually abused by the age of 18. That's 1 in 3. But for a long time, it was a problem very few talked about. In fact, only 1 in 10 actually discloses or talks about their abuse. That's changing now. More men are speaking out about their experiences. They're asking for help, and they're finding precious few services available to them. Joining us to discuss this growing issue of concern is Len Kushier, who is a therapist and supervisor of the Children's Aid Society in London, and Donald Dehaney, who was sexually abused as a child. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'd like to hear your story, Donald. Can you tell us what happened to you as a child?
I was sexually abused from ages 4 to 15 until I left the home by my father. And it was like a relationship abuse. And so that the trauma of it is more of a psychological thing, because it's a game, it's not forced, and it becomes normal. And that's the problem. When you leave the abuse, you become so used to it that you sometimes seek it out in other relationships after.
So for you, originally, it felt normal. It wasn't something wrong. You didn't know something was going wrong, but later you recognized that it was? How did that happen?
There's no way, like I was 3 and a half when it started, so it was 4, so I didn't know it was wrong, but you become to realize it because you are told to lie. It's a secret. And then when you ask questions, I always ask questions like, why can't I tell?
Right.
And so that's when you begin to realize, and it makes you feel part of the guilty, though, because you're holding on this big secret, and it just adds to the trauma.
When did you actually disclose your abuse?
My younger brother disclosed it to my mother. She believed it, but she was part of the victim mentality too. She wasn't independent. She couldn't see a way out, but she believed us, and that was important. That was a positive thing. But it wasn't until all of us, actually it was the reverse, us 4 children took our mother out and left the home, and that's when the abuse stopped.
Right. Wow. Len Kushier, how many kids, the survey, the Badgley report of 1984, indicates that 33% of males are victims of unwanted sex by the age of 18. But we get the sense that this is becoming a crisis. Is it, in terms of the numbers themselves?
Well, the numbers certainly are inconsistent, but the number of men that are coming forward now and asking for help are putting it in I think, the area of a crisis, because there's not enough services for them. And these men are in a lot of anguish because they've finally decided to talk about it, to open it up, but they don't know where to go with that. And I think that is a crisis.
That's one of the problems, first of all, is getting men to, or men allowing themselves to disclose that this has happened. Why is that? Why is it all of us find it more difficult to understand or to, to get our minds wrapped around male sexual abuse?
There's a couple of things. I think we socialize males in a way that doesn't allow them to be victims, to experience feelings like hurt and fear. And so they learn to keep these things inside of them. They don't want to talk about that. They feel that being a victim doesn't make them masculine. And the other thing is that men don't seem to recognize the impact the abuse has had on them as much as women do for some reason. So they may not see the abuse. They may have a lot of problems in their life, but they may not relate that, to the abuse.
Well, let me ask Donald then, how did you find the trauma for yourself? I mean, Len was just talking about men don't generally recognize the trauma on themselves. What did you recognize? What made you go out and seek help?
I think I'm an exception to the rule, because since I went, I charged my father 10 years ago, and I got a conviction. And then I went public with my story at that time. And I think that I've always been highly motivated on figuring out myself, understanding myself. And many males have since told me that they were abused, but they would never come forward. And they're ashamed of the association that people have in their minds between sex with a male and homosexuality.
Right. Well, when you sought help, was there help available for you when you needed it?
I went to my family doctor, and I encourage listeners to do the same thing. That's the beginning, because I don't think that, I was motivated, that I would have kept on going, but my doctor recommended a social worker. So at the time, there was not someone specializing in the field 10 years ago. You're right. But this social worker did help me.
Well, Len, what is the situation now? You say that there are not enough services available. What do you mean by that?
Well, certainly there are services available for some problem areas that people have, like addictions, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, of course, which very often relate to abuse. So you can get services for that, but there are not a lot of what we call victim-specific services or victim-sensitive services that focus on the whole area of abuse. Unless somebody's in an acute crisis and goes into a hospital or something like that. But there are very few group therapy programs in this country that address male sexual abuse, or individual counselors that are affordable and accessible.
Your group therapy group or program
Yes.
is only one of 4 in Ontario, is that correct?
That we know of. There may be more, but there's only 4 that I have heard, and I've been working in this area for 4 years now.
How do you help men deal with this problem?
In the group, what we do is try to provide a safe atmosphere for men to support each other in looking at what the abuse did, what the impact of the abuse was, and then developing some more or less roadmaps for changing, for improving the situation, for getting on with their life so the abuse doesn't hold back and color their options to be a fulfilling person.
Donald, has the abuse colored your options?
Oh, definitely. I've tried to, although I have tried to turn that negative into a positive, but it does as far as relationships. And I mean, the therapy is what's changed my life. I mean, I now have self-esteem, whereas I didn't. I was an introvert, and now I'm an extrovert. I mean, it just helped me to deal with relationships, deal with the memories,
and you help others now as
yes,
well.
Definitely. It's been a very positive thing to turn my life around and help other people. Has given my life extra purpose and meaning.
The fact of the matter is that for female victims of sexual abuse, even though many will say that certainly there aren't enough services for women as well, services are easier to find for women. Do you think this is going to change for men as our consciousness has been raised about this issue?
Well, I hope so. And I think Dawn is an example of that. I think as more men come forward and tell this story, then it may encourage other men, and in particular young males, because being treated as a survivor is too late. We should be helping our young male victims at the time that they disclose, and that's where I think society is really failing.
And with the help that you've received, Donald, you figure there's always the question of the cycle continuing. Are you afraid of that?
No, I'm not. I think it's a choice, you know, and I chose to live a positive life and be a good person.
Thank you, both of us, for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
We'll be back with more of Canada.
Towards 2000,